Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monday Night Roundup here on Blood Bowl Live. Here to go through the last 2 weeks worth of action from the ADBBL Season 7. We are covering all four semi-finals. We are covering both finals as well. So we'll talk about our champions and talk about how we got there and all that sort of stuff. As you can see, no Scott Bryant this week. He is having a great time traveling for work. But the ever present Mr. Tom Hovell is here. Tom, hello, sir. Ready to go through some semi finals?
Hi, yeah, absolutely. Let's go for it.
It's going to be slightly less unhinged than when it was just me, so that's good. I'm sure that we'll be. I don't know. Let's see, like how much Scott actually keeps us in check. Whether you know whether we just end up going completely off piece or not. Who knows? Let's go to our first game then. Let's dive straight. Oh, actually, before we dive in, Scott would want us to mention, we're not going to his corner this week, but he would want us to tell people about the beer mats that are available. If you are interested in a beer mat, it's £5 for 6 beer mats. They have the scatter template on one side, they have the passing template on the other. They're really good. They look great. If you are interested, contact Scott. The profit that we make off them will all go to Macmillan Cancer Support, so it's all going to a good cause. So if you want a beer mat, just contact Scott Bryant through one of the various channels that you can contact him, and he will tell you what you need to know. Cool. The fact that that was the length of Scott's corner means we've cut a good 10 minutes off our broadcast today. So let's go to the first semi-final that we had, which was in the conference. And it was the Necromantic Horror team of Elliot's versus Phil's Corn team, the Gilded Knights of Cerulean. Scott's in the chat. Hi, Scott. It was a very, very tight game. A very, very tight game that went to a roll off. I think in extra time, both coaches thought that they could win it, and it was more a case of Elliot hanging on than sort of being in that position of pressure. Probably one of his trickier games that he's had over the course of the season. But a game that he came out on the roll off. I believe it was either 3-1 or 3-2 on the roll off to Elliot. Um, uh, Tom, it's. I'm not sure where to start with this one because I think um, it may be, without doing Phil a disservice, maybe seeing Elliot progress through the semi-finals wasn't a surprise, knowing how good he has been in previous seasons and how he's sort of built into what grown into this team, improved as he goes on, and by the time he's at this point, he doesn't look like a coach that should be in the conference.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you're quite right. But it looks like Phil gave as good as he got really on this one. It's this corn team has really developed over time. Actually, he's had a few kind of like skill upgrades. A lot of them were randoms, but quite a few of those randoms are pretty good. Quite a lot of two heads, big hand, disturbing presence, very long legs. So these are quite nice little skills for a corn team, especially. Um, and it, as you say, Elliot, we know there are players that you or coaches you kind of really wish you don't want to come up against too early. So it seems to be a quite an even based match here because obviously Phil what came up turn 8, he's ahead 1 touchdown. Then straight out of the blocks gets an injury on one of his Marauder linemen, but then gives it straight back. So it badly injures a flesh golem, which is quite a significant piece player on a necromantic horror team. Um, and then there's the touchdown. So it's 1-1, goes into a bit of extra time at the end of it. But actually, one of the wolves gets injured it's a -1 on passing, so it's not really an issue, but it's still something. So I assume that must have been a go for it or a trip or something like that, or a both down for it to go that way. And as you say, it's always a bit disappointing when it ends on a roll off. But that's the way the dice roll, as they say.
Yeah, you never want to end a game on a roll off. You never want to end a good run on a roll off at all, which is always a shame for any coach kind of involved. It's not the way you want to win. I know Elliott's won through roll offs before. It's not the way you want to lose because you to get to that point, you do kind of feel like you've put in a shift and you've done enough. And yeah, it's horrible to go out in that luck, that bad luck. Yeah, I mean, Elliot takes through into the final then a very strong looking team. The werewolf was missed next game with the passing stats, so the werewolf not available for the final. It's two very different teams here with how they've kind of prepared skills because there's a lot more choices taking place for Elliot's team. And I guess it's the good thing about Corn is that the fact you can take mutations, a lot of the randoms are random mutations, and there's not many bad ones.
No.
Mutation is generally good. I mean, it's impressive that Phil has stuck with a Bloodseeker that's been stat busted twice by the looks of it to have Edge 6 plus is a I guess you're not going to be doing much dodging with a Bloodseeker, but that's still dedication to stick with them. Passing, I don't know. Would you? Because we'll talk more about Elliot later because we'll discuss his final. Would you redraft this team? Are you seeing players here for the Corn team? Because I know Phil's thinking about it. Are you seeing players in this Corn team that you think Phil should redraft
Yeah,
and give them a third season?
yeah, yeah. That block tackle, very long legs corner door would be quite a nice little piece. That's a tricky little thing. And as you say, with these mutations, I'm not kind of too afraid with what they can actually do and stuff. So that sometimes gives you a bit of a psychological advantage against players.
They're
Eventually,
less clear, aren't they? You can't
yeah,
you can't necessarily read them and know roughly what kind of help they're going to give you.
absolutely. And a lot of them you have to know them down to the nth degree because they activate at different points of a turn,
Mm.
like your disturbing presence and your foul appearances and things like that. So yeah, I'd definitely take that block tackle, very long legs one. Um, the I don't know, like big hand. What's that? Is that good for catching? Is that good for picking up?
Ooh, I want to
You've
say
got
big hand is good for picking up. Someone in the chat might tell us. Alternatively, I've got the rule book right here. No, that's Death Zone. No idea. Wrong
oh,
ball. Rule book. Not prepared. Someone in the chat tell us what Big Hand does. I'm looking at that Bloodseeker with block and claws. Frenzy block and claws on a Bloodseeker is a killing machine. I'm looking at. It's tricky. I always think like, oh, should you bother bringing back a basic lineman when they're not particularly interesting? But frenzy block and horns on just a regular lineman is pretty good.
I've
And
just
yeah.
yeah, I've just looked up big hands. A big hand ignores tackle zone modifiers as well as weather storm when attempting to pick up the ball. So
So that's
that's a
pretty good
nice
then.
little thing for a corn
Yeah.
team.
That's picking up on a 3, no, regardless of the tackle zones. And
Yeah,
there are I'm sure there are mutations that make dodging easier. So if you can now choose that as the next one, that's a really you're creating is we've seen it in previous seasons with pestigores that have then had all these skills and all these mutations and suddenly become these kind of incredible agile players within these teams that aren't overly agile. So yeah, we'll see whether Phil does bring them back. And how many he chooses to bring back. He's going to have a good budget if he does. And well done, Phil, on a good season. I know it wasn't the group stage that he wanted, and he's got quite unlucky in a few games, but made it to the semi final and gave a good player like Elliot a run for their money. So well done on that. Um, we'll talk more about Elliot when we get to his final game. But we will move on to, let's stay in the conference. Let's do the conference semis first.
Okay.
And we will look at the Atomic Cherry Bombs versus the Transfagarian Terrors. 2-1 win for the Atomic Cherry Bombs in this case. Um, if you saw the stream for this one, I know there were some questions. The stream finished early because the players were running out of time in store, but they did play on until the end, just off the stream. They were allowed to play on, and the Atomic Cherry Bombs got a last turn touchdown to win the game. Um, in what was a very close game. And I don't want to do Scott disservice. I told him this at the weekend, and I tried to explain it in the nicest way I could. A player of John's kind of caliber and how good we know John is, how much John has played, the tournaments he goes to, the seasons or tournaments that he's won. I did think that this was going to be a really difficult task for Scott, because even though John's playing vampires that are a bit more yeah, a bit less reliable if the dice don't go your way, a bit prone to punching themselves. And I know he had a difficult start, losing some key players early on in the season, so it's been a very slow build. He's still a very, very good coach, and beating him is no easy feat. So it's a really, really good result for Scott here, and one that I think he has earned with kind of how patient he's been with this team. How he's been because he's been very focused on this being a 2-season build. Um, he's sort of still built something very incredible. So yeah, Tom, a very, very good result for Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. Both coaches are always fun to watch and see, as you quite rightly say. And John hasn't had the best of luck with this team, only actually winning one game in the entire season, and drawing a couple of times, and unfortunately losing most of them. But still, he's he's done the more tactical maneuver of building up the SPP and selecting skills on these vampires. So going into this match, he had, Scott had some quite difficult players against him. Two throwers, both with block and dodge, one with pro. Another blitzer with strip ball and block. So we've got block on a couple of thralls as well. So there's some quite key dangerous players, and equally the stats of them. They're all, as they sometimes say, the vampires are almost like strong elves anyway, with a lot
Yeah.
of the edge and everything like that, and the hypno gaze. So it was well won by Scott, and let's be honest, it's the reason why he's not here, because he's had to go into rehab after the party he had after this game of winning this game. So our thoughts and prayers are with you, Scott. So yeah, so it was a really interesting look at this, because it on the build timeline it was quite spread out, but going straight into fouling on turn two with elves. Now that's something you don't often see. And then going straight in, getting a casualty, and actually killing a thrall on turn three, which is nice to see. Um, but equally, as you've said, it was a hard fought match with Scott. Scott went down one touchdown, and going into the first half, but stuck with it. It's as you say, John's a very, very good coach. He's played all over the world. In fact, I often like to see where he's been in the world and played. In Florida and other places. But Scott didn't let it deter him that, oh, it's 1-0. Oh, he's going to run away with it. He came back. So well done. Great game by the looks of things.
Yeah, I guess a team like the Wood Elves who can score so quickly, um, John scores on turn 7, and I would assume that was one turn earlier than he wanted to score, knowing he was leaving Elves with two turns to score, and in two turns they did. So it was a bit of a 2-1 grind from that perspective from Scott, but yeah, a very good performance. Lots of casualties, 4-0 on casualties in this game, and a good amount of SPP to take into the final. Was very good. I guess we'll ask the same question of John's team then as we did of Phil's team. Is If John wanted to redraft this team, and I don't know, I get the impression that maybe there's some unfinished business there with this team in this league based on the season he's had. But if you are looking to redraft here, I mean, there's three players that have clearly been carefully curated here. The two throwers and the blitzer. Um, do you just simply, if you can, redraft those three and call it a day? Is there any point in redrafting a thrall with block? How are you looking at it?
Yeah, absolutely. I take those three. I'd drop the rest, including the Vargeist, and get myself a runner, or maybe if I've got enough time, amount, another. So two runners. I do like the runners in the vampire team. They are really good. Although their strength isn't that great, they're fantastic for that running in and hypno gazing, and then the other one running past with the ball. And yeah, like you say, block on that blitzer. That's brilliant. Yeah, I definitely think this is a 2-season team at least.
It's a very strong lineup, and I hope we'll see them again. So John, again, well done on a tough draw for John, a tough season with these vampires, but semi-finals are never easy feats to get to. So well done on a good strong season there. Again, we'll talk about Scott a bit more when we get to his final, but let's now go to the semi-finals of the Champions draw, the Champions Trophy. We will skip very quickly over Dead Star Belgrade versus Hudor Hellions. The game was not going to be able to be played. The two coaches rolled off, and it was a victory on the roll off to the Hudor Hellions side, narrowly winning on the roll off there and going through to the final. Dave has built a very good team here with this undead team. There's lots of unspent SPP there, and I hope that we will see them redrafted into a third season. I think he's really got something good here. He's only randomized on linemen and got strong, really good skills on the random. So he's been very patient with them. So I really hope we'll see them again. And rather entertainingly, Scott then had to play another game with his Old World Alliance. I guess yeah. We never want to see games rolled off, but we got to roll off here, and hopefully hopefully shambling team we'll see again in the future. So, who was Scott going to face? Well, it was going to be either the Lustrian Legends or the Graveyard Groovers, and another very close game, a 2-1 victory here for the Amazon team. Really tricky here. It was really tricky one to call because I think both teams were, up until this point, unbeaten this season. Both teams, I think, won every game this season, but the Graveyard Groovers had one game that was admin that wasn't played. So going into it, it was a difficult one to call. It was a very strong team versus very agile team. And I think we said last week, Tom, I don't know who, I didn't know immediately who was going to go into it as the winner, and I think either team would have probably deserved it.
Absolutely, yeah. It was one of those really, really tricky ones to kind of call. Tom has been playing out of his skin with these Amazons, and equally Robert just knows how to play a bashy game, really. So it's two really good coaches coming up against each other on this side of things. Started off pretty well straight off the bat for Robert and his team, with the mummy causing an injury. Maybe it was a turnover. I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Eastbright in the chat. My dogs were going nuts, so I decided to mute myself. And actually, Tom, I muted you.
There you go. I was just about to say. I
top,
was just saying. I was
top
just saying.
quality broadcasting that you get from us here, as I tried to shut the dogs up and failed miserably. I'm the only one who heard you there, Tom. But yeah, I think Robert did receive first by the looks of it. Would be my guess, I think. And then went in with the touchdown at half time. And then a good kind of comeback to take it to extra time here. The Jack, I think, was watching this game. He's in the chat. He said a very close game. Watched the whole thing, and there were a few points where I feared for Tom getting the win. Robert played incredibly well, but sadly was no match for Tom at the end. It's There's something that I always think is very harsh when it comes to extra time, which is more often than not, you see the person who receives an extra time being the one who takes the win, which I think is always very harsh on the person who doesn't, because I think it could, you always think it could go either way. But at the same time, that person still has to score to not go to the roll off, so it's still a impressive feat. Um, so we know that Robert's not redrafting next season, but let's pretend that he was. Um, he's skill wise on players, not I mean, there's not as much there. There's a lot of patience that he's had in how he's built this team. Um, who do you bring back for this particular one here? Do you just bring back the white blitzer and the blocking mummy, or do you bother with the strip ball blitzer? What do you do with those two ghoul runners? One's got, like, do you take the one that's got Dauntless as the random? I don't know. How do you who do you take from this team?
Yeah, this is not as easy as the others, really, and it's interesting to see where as you go through, and as obviously we've come to the end of the season, different teams. It's incredible how many some have got multiple skills on practically the whole team, and then you've got others that have clearly done very well and gone literally all the way through, nearly to the end, and only have a few skills. It seems that potentially this team. I've never played Shambling Undead. I've never played against Shambling Undead. They seem to be quite a slow but strong team. Clearly, with those two mummies at strength 5. Um, my personal thing is, yeah, I'd probably only take the block mummy and the tackle mighty blow blitzer out of that selection, and then go for a brand new selection if I was redrafting. Yourself?
I might take the block ghoul runner, but not the block dauntless. I think the block dauntless is just a little bit too much extra money. I think probably I wouldn't go for that. Tom is in the chat, who was in this game. He says, I think I would have won even if I had kicked in extra time, because Robert had no ghoul runners and no rerolls left, and Tom had all his positionals and 2 rerolls left to go in that extra half. I think that probably is a good shout, because your scoring threat in the Shambling team is the ghoul runners. And yeah, having none of them left would have been really tough. I mean, he'd have been 4 players down if he had none of them left on the pitch. So that's going to be an uphill feat, an uphill battle, absolutely. Well done to Robert. Another great season, another semi-final visit, and yeah, a good team that he's built here. And yeah, it'll be a shame not to see them next season. But yeah, I think a good season that he's had there, a season to be proud of. We will talk about Tom in a moment when we talk about his final game. But first, we will go to the conference final, which was between the Atomic Cherry Bombs and the I'm Not Boring Necromantic Horror team from Elliot. A very, very close game here. I'm going to go and make sure my dogs are not just going completely nuts in the garden. So, Tom, I'm going to hand over to you to sort of tell us what tour play tells us happened in this one, because uh, much more casualties from the Necro side, much more SPP from the Necro side. A very tight game that I think tool play maybe doesn't quite tell the full story, but I'll let you run through that, and I
Okay.
will go and sort some dogs out.
Yeah. Yeah. So congratulations to both of these coaches to getting to the final. It does really look like it was a great game to play. starting straight away with Scott trying to start fouling, then unfortunately getting a number of injury, getting one of his linemen injured, not even injured but dead, and then the cheek of it, the necromancer turns it into a zombie for Elliot's team, and then just a bit of tit for tat there with a Bob icing Bakewell, then causing a -1 passing on the Ghoul Runner down into turn 5. We then play on, carry on with a foul by constantly being fouled with the necromantic horror team, with linemen fouling and then casualties being caused again on linemen. No one really getting those war dancers, and all the way till the end, which is at turn 11. So turn 11, unfortunately, Bob Icing Bakewell gets a -1 passing injury, and then it's then right at the very last moment, the actual goal runner for Elliot's team walks the ball in by the looks of things, which is a bit of a sad story. And the interesting thing is that we heard a number of times from Scott in the break build up to this that he was going to randomize on his treeman, and he actually got brawler on the treeman, but does not play a part at all in the whole of the actual game by the looks of things, but still gets MVP.
Yeah, Brawler was a good random for that tree man. I think in hindsight, could have been absolutely worse. Gives you a bit of help if you roll a both down on the dice. First half in this one, um, Scott was very close to scoring a number of times. Had the ball was bouncing around players in the right near the end zone, but Elliot put enough kind of pressure on it and surrounded by it that it didn't matter too much. When it came to the second half and it was still 0-0, and the necromantic horror team had the ball, there were not many elves left on the pitch, and
There was only two elf players left on the pitch.
yeah, Elliot just removed them, and Scott still did well. Still got some kind of gutsy dodges out to do some one dice blocks to get powers to free up the ball. Even when he did that, it went into the crowd and they threw it and it landed next to a flesh golem. There was maybe the kind of luck that he needed for those kind of plays didn't really pull off. But Elliot sort of at no point, and we've seen the same with Elliot over previous seasons. At no point did Elliot look phased or concerned by how it was going. I think he was confident that even if he had gone 1-0 down in the first half, he could clear enough elves. And I think seeing how the game ended, I think if Scott had gone 1-0 up in the first half, I think it could have been extra time with 8 or 9 players versus 2, and then I
Mhm.
think that extra time is going the way of the necromantic horror. So I think the game was won here on the removals. Absolutely being helped by the fact that the first death that he caused got him a lineman. So that's immediately adding to his subs and adding to his bench. So a very strong game for Elliot. Um, Now we know that Scott is redrafting this team, and looking at it, pretty confident that he'll try and redraft both War Dancers, the catcher, possibly the thrower with leader. And do you think he would need to do any more? That's already a very expensive redraft when you look at how much. There's a War Dancer there that's 185k. It's a very
Mhm.
expensive redraft. So, do you think he'll go for all 4 of those? What do you think he'll do?
I think he might go for the first three. So the two war dancers and the catcher. That catcher is quite interesting with sprint, block, and jump up. So
Mm,
that's giving you what movement 11, and that even if they're knocked down. So
yeah.
that's a very nice little piece there. Yeah, strip ball's quite fun by the looks of things. We're on a war dancer as well as mighty blow on a war dancer, which is a bit cheeky. So yeah, I think those would be my ones. I don't know if he's bringing back the tree man or not.
I think probably no. I think it would be a very bold move to redraft that tree man at that cost with those skills.
Hmm.
Um, in a team where you need that money for the war dances and the catches and the throws. I don't. My money would be on no, but not sure. Um, Looking at Elliot's team, then I don't know whether Elliot is thinking of redrafting or not. I know he kind of bounced between whether he would or wouldn't. I think maybe getting to the final and winning it would lean him towards doing the redraft. Maybe more likely to do it. Who would you bring back for this one? Because I'm looking at this particular redraft, this particular team, and I'm thinking that there's obviously a werewolf there with block, tackle, dodge that you're going to redraft. I think the Wraith with guard and tackle is a very, very good piece as well. Um, and possibly then the block, guard, flesh golem. Would you bring back someone else? Are you looking at either of those ghoul runners as tempting you?
The block guard golem I would have. I really do like the Necromantic Horror team. They're a great team to play. I'm actually taking them to the tournament this weekend. And funny enough, I've got block on my flesh golem. I've got block on a werewolf. So just the same as it. And in fact, I've put guard on the wraith as well. So those are three really strong pieces there, especially when you've got block, tackle, and dodge on a werewolf, which is pretty impressive. What's he got on his? Oh, he's only got one goal runner, has he? At the moment, and that's out at the moment. Which again, that's
Uh,
before
2. So there's a Ghoul Runner with Dirty Player Sneaky Git, and there's another one with Sure Hands and Block.
that's
Sure
Sure
Hands
Hands and
and
Block.
Block is a good combo, to be
Yeah,
fair.
and that is. And again, funny enough, I put Sure Hands on one of my goal runners for this tournament as well. So that is, I would say for me that would be that Sure Hands block goal runner. I'd maybe use that block guard flesh golem. Definitely the block, tackle, dodge, werewolf. And if I've got money left over and I've got enough money in the kitty, that guard, tackle, wraith.
That would be a very strong team to bring back, and I kind of hope we see them again. I mean, I kind of hope we see them again. I'm all up for him renaming it. If he could rename his team from "I'm Not Boring," I don't know why he chose that. Elliot, rename the team. He just call them the Numpties again. I don't care. I just hate the name.
Call them above average now. Just call them above average.
um, well done to Elliot. A very impressive back to back, three finals in a row, two titles in a row, even if one is the conference and not the champions. But it's still an impressive run in both seasons. It's still impressive to get all the way to a final. And then to win it, you still got to play well, regardless of how the group goes. And I think he'll feel unlucky to have got out of that group, to not got out of that group. So well done to him. And Scott, I know we're going to see this team again. And I think they're going to become, with the practice that he's now getting with them, they're going to become a team to watch next season for sure. And I hope we see them in the Champions Trophy next year. To our grand final, then to our final of finals, and in many different ways, this was I feel like you could probably have almost kind of guessed this as a result, looking at everything going into it, looking at Tom's run this season, 10 games, not just unbeaten, 10 wins in a row, not something we have seen in any season previous. An incredible run of results. Looking at the results here, 2-0, 2-1, 3-1, 4-0, 4-0, 2-1, 3-1, 2-0, 3-2, 2-1. Even in games where he's conceded, it looks like he's had some amount of control. He's built a team that is full of SPP that's unspent, full of chosen skills. There's just the one random there. It's an incredible looking team. It's an incredible looking lineup, and he came up against a old world team who we know Scott's not overly enjoyed playing old world. We know old world has its issues. We know they're not as much of a specialist team, and I think it feels to me like the right. If it felt to me like if you were going to put money on this, Tom, you were going to put money on the Amazons, and you would have had the correct bet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I grow up, I want to be like Tom. Getting that kind of level. And equally for all you kids out there, clearly reverse psychology works really well, because Scott's proves that. Every time I spoke to Scott, he was like, "I hate this team, I hate this team," but as he's got into the final, so yeah, you can see that there was clearly a good game here. Just under 2 hours, and it'd be interesting to know, because obviously I don't know how many times Tom actually took a star player, but in this one he took the White Dwarf, and again it'd be interesting to see how much that impacted him, like, in the game.
I think it was I think it was a good move. I don't think it was the move that Scott thought he was going to do, because I discussed with Scott what he thought Tom might take and the kind of options Tom have. I don't think the White Dwarf was on that list, and I think Tom had to make some changes to accommodate that. Um, but it felt like a clinical performance. I think there was an element of Scott's dice were very bad. Scott's alluded to it in the chat where he said that he was rolling dice that only had skulls on it. He was rolling some really terrible rolls, and Tom's armor rolls were absolutely on point. I was playing Harrison on a couple of tables over, and I kept hearing Tom just casually go, "That's a knockout. That's a knockout. That's a knockout." He was just removing the players, nicely done. Um, Looking at Tom in the chat, it said he picked the dwarf for Elliot winning last season with dwarfs. So yeah, a really good choice. I think it was a good move in this game. Do we think, if I'm being honest, did he need the star player? Um, It'll be interesting, Tom, if you want to say in the chat whether you felt that was the kind of key thing that won the game or not. Um, let's have a look at Scott's old world team. Now, we know 100% guaranteed we will never see this team again. Never again. I know that we won't. Look at the number of skills and SPP he has managed to get, though. It is a very good team. And you look at some of these players, if we just entertain the fact that a redraft may have happened, I mean, who do you pick? There's so many that I think are
Yeah,
possibly good options.
I'd run that human catcher on my human team for a start. That block, sidestep, sprint, defensive. Wow, that's great.
Yeah, defensive maybe not ideal, but
No,
block, sidestep, and sprint
sprint. Yeah, that's good.
with the catch and dodge that it comes with already. That's a very very strong player there. Um, Sprint on a halfling we know is always a very handy thing to have, which we're going to throw them. Tree man with guard and multiple block. I mean, that's ideal for your tree. I'm also looking at that dwarf blitzer that's got tackle and wrestle there. A lot of tackle players, tackle and sure hands on a troll slayer. Not so sure on the sure hands on that one, but yeah. Would you mainly take the catcher? Would you also take the thrower? Dump off, safe pass and block is a pretty safe selection of passing skills.
Yeah, yeah, that's quite good. I don't know if I'd take anything else really, to be honest. Um, yeah, sprint on that halfling possibly.
It's yeah, it's been a season to forget. It's weird to say that it's been a season to forget for Scott when he's got all the way to the final. I just know that it hasn't been as like the team he hasn't enjoyed playing as much. But I guess we can kind of highlight that really does like give some credit to him as a coach, that it's a team that he doesn't like. He knows that they're maybe not one of the strongest teams out there, didn't really enjoy playing them, and still managed to put together a run to the final for a chance of the win. So, I think that speaks a lot to him as a coach. Looking at the Amazons, then, I mean, it feels like every player with a skill is a player that you might want to bring back.
Yeah.
Tom, you can tell us in the chat if you're gonna redraft this team, but you almost are looking at all four players there that are positionals with skills, and you're thinking could probably bring any of them. What do you think? Would you go for all three? Because all four? Because again, that's an expensive draft.
That is a very expensive draft. I would definitely take that thrower, because that thrower is now throwing on a 2 up, with that accurate on short and quick passes, isn't it?
Mm.
So that's pretty spicy. Have you got any kind of receivers on that side of things? Because well, they're receiving on a 3. So yeah, that blitzer with block, tackle, and strip ball definitely. The block, that Dragula blocker with guard. I don't know if it was that one or the one above it with block as well. When I played him, it was a nightmare. You stick a strength 4 player with guard on the line, you're like, great, you know. Unless you had like Chaos Renegades with multiple strength 4 plus, or like the Mummies with strength 5, you're kind of just done for. And they've got dodge everywhere. And as we know, what I'd like to take, actually, I'd redraft Tom's dice. If I could redraft Tom's dice, that'd be good. Can we put that in the because obviously you can change things in tour play. Can we do that next year? Yeah, we
Thought to
can have.
redraft someone else's dice rolls.
Yeah, yeah, could we do
Let me just double check.
that?
No,
All right.
I think probably not. But it sounds like Tom might be looking to redraft, depending on if there's a new team announced, which we are pretty confident that there will be on Thursday. So I think we all might wake up to a new team then, and it sounds like that could sway Tom's choice. But yeah, I mean, there's almost an argument that you start a new team, you go 10 games, 10 game winning streak, you come out as champion, put stop there. you know uh that there's not much bigger achievement you can get than that. It's a very impressive feat and a very good performance by Tom, a very worthy champion. Looking at his results, there is no one else that comes close to the dominance that he has had this season. So absolutely well done to Tom.
But you say that,
Um,
but he wasn't the most versatile. Wasn't the most versatile team.
he wasn't. We won't spend too much time on the honors, but let's just see where some of our champions do sit on here. Um, Elliot and Tom, our two champions, tie for the most famed. Um, as far as experience goes, both our champions are not even on the list. Versatile just misses out on that. A very tight battle for most versatile, but he does comfortably takes home top scorer.
That's
Um,
incredible. That score.
it's very good score. And looking through, those are the main ones that are dominated by our winners. I mean,
I'd like
just
to think I took. I like to think I had a helping hand in that list, that scoring one. Yeah.
well, I mean, Phil takes credit for Elliot's top score last season, so I think you can take credit for Tom's top score this season. Um,
You're welcome.
I mean, just looking at the best run, 10 games, 10 wins in a row. I don't think there's any, I'd be surprised if in another season we got that level of dominance. I honestly would. It's an incredible result. So well done to him. Um, well, I mean, that is our I guess our games. We've got two third place playoff games to come. Um, all third place playoff coaches have been offered to share third place, but I think that at least one of those games will take place, hopefully two, to see who gets third place. The next time that we will be here doing the roundup will be after those games have or haven't taken place, and we will do our end of season review. We'll go through, we'll revisit the group stage, we'll revisit the early rounds, we'll see who are the big surprises. We'll take everything into account, and we will run through the whole season. And I think that's probably it from us. Tom, anything that I'm forgetting?
No, no, I don't think so. It's been a fantastic season. I've been really, really enjoying it. There's been some highs and lows, but most importantly, there's been some fantastic games. I've had well, literally hats off to all you coaches for all the games you've played and just the fun that you get going into Arvox and Dragons and seeing the games being played. And that's the nice thing. There's been a lot of respect amongst the actual coaches. So yep, congratulations to the winners, but well done to everyone for playing and taking part.
I couldn't have said it better myself, sir. Well done. Thank you, everybody, for being with us this week. We will see you for the end of season review. Remember that there is the Stunty tournament happening on the 8th. Get yourself signed up and paid for that. Visit the shop to pay your entry and get registered for that. And after that stunty tournament, we will be doing our Cheers to Nuffle, where we will give our coaches their prizes and generally celebrate what has been another fantastic season. So thank you very much, everybody, for being with us. We will see you next time.